Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到洛杉矶华人资讯网的直播现场，我是主播莉亚。对于许多经历过胚胎移植的女性来说，最令人感觉到焦虑的莫过于就是胚胎移植后的那些日子了，因为它可能会发生风险，比如说呢，像生化或者是停胎。那么这些情况呢，不仅让患者感觉到十分的失落，也常常让他们对再次尝试而望而却步。那很多患者就会问说，为什么会这样呢？是不是我身体有问题啊？那下次我再做的话，怎么避免这种情况呢？那么这些疑问呢，是反映了患者对于结果的不安和对未来的担忧。那今天呢，我们将会聚焦这个和试管婴儿密切相关的话题：胚胎移植之后的潜在风险究竟是什么？我们又该如何科学的看待并且解决这些问题呢？那今天节目非常荣幸邀请到的是生殖领域的权威专家 HRC 生殖中心的 Dr. John Norian， 他将会用专业的视角来为我们解析风险背后的原因，并且提供切实可行的建议。那么在介绍医生之前，首先来看一下 HRC 生殖医疗集团，成立在1988年，是拥有全美罕见 FDA、CAP、CLIA 3级认证级别的生殖医院，旗下9家医院坐落在北美，4所全球先进完善的胚胎实验室和19位试管婴儿专家。2023年 HRC Fertility 被美国 Newsweek 新闻周刊评价为 America's Best Fertility Clinics， 2023年美国最佳生育诊所。那 Dr. Norian 呢是在Cucamonga 和 Pasadena office 来工作。首先呢，请 Dr. Norian 打个招呼吧。Hi, Dr. Norian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. 我很高兴认识你，Leah. I'm really happy to be here and to speak with you about embryo transfer.
Wow, that's a great introduction. We love it. So we're so excited with you to discuss very important question. How to correctly manage the possible risks after embryo transfer. To start, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Dr. John Norian. I'm a double board certified reproductive endocrinologist, a fertility specialist. I did my training at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, went to UC Berkeley, but joined the HRC fertility practice years ago, and I really enjoyed taking care of patients throughout the world, whether they live in Asia, whether they live in Europe, just getting people just good, dedicated, high-quality care. And I like to narrate as I go, sort of describe what's going on, so my patients that we're working with know what's going on. And then, of course, having access to an amazing embryology laboratory, scientific laboratory, and having a wonderful team of coordinators who speak multiple languages.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Now we're going to this very important question. After embryo transfer, many people just wonder what they might experience. People get nervous after that. So could you please explain what usually happens after procedure?
Sure. Embryo transfer, it's an important day. It's a wonderful day in the sense that this is the day that we glide the embryo into the uterus. And what we do is I usually tell women it's the one day that we need a person to have a full bladder. Now, that being said, the patient will arrive, she'll check in. The nurse coordinators will make sure that she's not too full. We don't want people having doing the pee-pee dance, but we want to be able to see where we are. And then biologically, it helps flatten the uterus. So when we glide the embryo in, it's a little easier. Wow. Then I come in to the room. I share a photo of the embryo. We see the embryo on the screen just above us. While we're doing the transfer, we do an identification check. And then a partner, a family member can be in the room, and we're typically listening to spa music. Many times women don't necessarily even feel the embryo glide coming into the uterus. It's just a small piece of small little noodle, a piece of angel hair pasta that we use to glide the embryo in.
Well, that's wonderful. It's good to know that there's no pain, almost like chilling and relaxing and celebration moment. So I definitely feel like you have a good mood that will definitely help the process. And after the process, are there any certain things patients need to monitor, or should they pay attention to, particularly regarding the medication or other precautions?
Yeah. So regarding medications, it's a great question. We encourage people, please stay on our medications, because those light hormones that we're giving you are helping to support the embryo to implant. In terms of other stuff, a lot of us reproductive endocrinologists, we debate about this. Do you need to bed rest? Do you not? Here's what I do. Dr. Norian, Dr. John Norian, what we recommend is the day of transfer and the day after, just try to take it easy. Just a little lighter activity, but you're not on bed rest. You can go out to lunch with a girlfriend. I encourage people watch their favorite show. Just relax. Just take it easy. If you want to go for a little casual walk in the neighborhood, that sounds good. Then beyond that, while we're waiting for the blood test, waiting for the embryo to implant, I tell people just do your best. Try to go back to your normal routine, your normal life. But of course, don't jump out of airplanes, not too much strenuous activity. And then, like we said, stay on your medications and do your best. A little bit of spotting after implantation or even 4 or 5 days later may actually believe it be a good sign. It may be suggestive of implantation. So, just follow what your care provider, what your doctor, your nurse coordinator wants you to do, and just try to stay positive. Don't overthink it. You've done your part up to that point.
That's wonderful. I mean, those are excellent recommendations. Some people, unfortunately, going to face more challenges. For example, what steps should patients take if they had a chemical pregnancy, and how to avoid that in the future?
Right. So even taking a step back, what is a chemical pregnancy? What is a biochemical pregnancy? So what those are early pregnancies that we see a positive hormone level, a positive HCG level, a pregnancy test, but we don't make it to the point of seeing a yolk sac or seeing a gestational sac when we do ultrasound. That goes along more with miscarriage, a true spontaneous miscarriage. So chemical pregnancy, it's an early miscarriage. It's still part of the same continuum of early pregnancy. Why do they happen? Honestly, doctors are not 100% certain, but many of us feel that early miscarriage tends to be more related to the embryo than the environment, than the uterus, than the female factor, environmental factors, because it's almost nature's way of self-correcting. The thing is, Leah, that it's hard for patients that I work with, because a lot of times with IVF, we create embryos, we biopsy them, we take a few cells and determine using PGT or pre-implantation genetic testing if it's quote unquote chromosomally normal. And even with that, that's a way to lower miscarriage rate. It's a way to get more information and to improve implantation, but still chemical pregnancies can happen, even though less commonly.
Right. So it sounds like we used all scientific methods to, get it more likely to be pregnant and less likely to have the biochemical pregnancy. I mean, after all, we have the PGT test to just test if the embryo is healthy enough. But you're talking about the environment. So let's say if the embryo goes to another person's body, like a surrogate, does it mean like it will have more chances to have the biochemical pregnancy than the embryo itself going to the provider herself?
Right. Not necessarily. No, I don't think so. I think it really depends. How closely have you screened the surrogate, right? How closely have you assessed her? Is it a good environment, right? Because sometimes future moms, future dads, especially future moms, because they're the ones who have the uterus, they may have endometriosis. They may have fibroids. They may have other factors that decrease the likelihood or the chance of implantation. So being able to have the luxury or the ability of using a surrogate who's had, let's say, 2 easy pregnancies, she's a stay-at-home mom, maybe she works part-time, those are the types of patients that we may just get lucky and have a better uterus. And please understand, not just get lucky. That's where you need a very compulsive physician, nurse coordinators evaluating the surrogates. What is her thyroid level? What is her vitamin D? What is her BMI? And, what is her home environment? Is she exposed to a lot of inflammation, a lot of stress? So those are things that we really target to make sure that we've got as good an environment as we can.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So what is the warning sign? I mean, how do I know that this is like normally bleeding occur after procedure, or it is kind of like a serious one? I need to watch out. It probably means I got a biochemical pregnancy.
Right. So what things we do? So number one, remember, we're checking pregnancy tests 10, 11, 12 days after embryo transfer. Mm-hmm. And what we typically like to see is we like to see the embryo level, the hormone level, doubling over 2, 3, 4 days. And we want to see a rise in the HCG level going up after when we're monitoring it. So if we're seeing pregnancies where the hormone level isn't rising the way we want it to, if it's just plateauing, then that may be a marker or a warning sign. Sometimes people will have more than just a little spotting. They'll have more like heavy spotting or a light period. That may not be a good sign. Or believe it or not, some people will feel pregnant, right? They'll have breast tenderness.
Yes.
They'll be tired all the time. And then maybe those symptoms will go away. So those all together sort of give us an idea, about a possible biochemical pregnancy.
Got it.
How do I intervene? What I intervene? We check hormone levels. We give strong progesterone. We encourage people to keep their activity a little lighter, drink more water, and then we hope for the best.
Okay. So additionally, is IVIG injection something you would recommend in such cases?
It's a great concept. It's one that people have really thought about for a long time. The data is not 100%, but IVIG, intralipids, other things to lower inflammation, right? These are all things that doctors talk about as a way to, hey, Dr. Norian, how can I tone down inflammation? Because a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses take care of inflammatory diseases. So that was the thought with IVIG, is we can give immunoglobulins, we can give healthy fats, intralipids, we can give, other compounds to tone down inflammation and then ideally help. So it's something that's discussed. It's not 100% accepted, but I've used it before.
Right. So let's say you just talk about the biochemical pregnancy is kind of like early stage. So what if the woman got pregnant and the baby has the heartbeat when he has like 6 to 8 weeks, but suddenly the heartbeat stops? I mean, it is heartbreaking. And what are common causes of this? And what advice do you have for moms in this situation?
Right. So remember, biochemical early pregnancies, I tend to think more about the embryo cause. But as the pregnancy goes on, as we have miscarriages after heartbeat, I get more excited about maybe an environment. Maybe the mom has a blood clotting disorder. Maybe there's a thyroid disorder, things like that. So then we think about, are there some other tests that we need to run, antiphospholipid antibodies? Do we need to do other tests so that we can intervene? So those might be things like heparin or Lovenox, or just adjust or treat a disorder that might be present. Believe it or not, people with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, they're more at risk for miscarriage.
Right.
So then, should they be on ovostatol, myo-inositol? Should they be taking metformin? Things like that will come up, and that's where you really want to have a good nerdy doctor who loves this stuff, just sort of partnering, working with your patients.
Right. Another question. So what if the patient failed for one cycle, second cycle, and probably feel like, oh, this is time when I should consider the surrogate? Does it will increase her chances to get a successful IVF treatment and got a baby from the surrogacy process? Right.
So when we talk about being unsuccessful, one question is there implantation or no implantation, right? And if there's no implantation and a woman would like to try to proceed again, it depends how many embryos there are. Usually we recommend, if there's 2 unsuccessful transfers, then we do what we call an ERA test, an endometrial receptivity analysis, where we do a mock cycle, and instead of transferring an embryo, we do a little scratching, get a little tissue, and determine, does a woman need one more day, one less day of progesterone?
Right.
Does she need Depo-Lupron? Let's say there's endometriosis. We can diagnose things that way.
Mm-hmm.
But then you had a very specific question. Dr. Norian, do you need a surrogate? Will that help? And honestly, Leah, what I would say is it really depends.
Right.
And it depends on the unique situation, depends on how many embryos we have left, and also people's goals. How many children do they want to have?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe we want to work with a surrogate for one child, and then maybe she still would like to carry a pregnancy.
Right.
So that's where we can do both. We can get creative. It's great.
Right. It really depends. I mean, this is the important thing for them. People always wanted to think thoroughly, understand the science behind it. But for most cases, scenario, and talk to doctors, their comments will be like, they're waiting too long. The longer you're waiting, the less likely that you can get pregnant by yourself, to be honest. And most problem is thinking too much, waiting too long. But there are people who are still hesitating. What would you like to say to them?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, because remember, time ends up being the biggest factor. And it's time, especially related to the female, because the female's egg quality, egg number, ovarian size will diminish as time goes on. Believe it or not, same with guys. Their testicles get a little smaller. They make a little less testosterone, but they still make sperm for whatever reason. They have stem cells in their testicles. Women are born with their set number of eggs. So we really need to encourage women to start treatment sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you were bringing up surrogacy. As women get older, they get more fibroids. Their uterus gets a little more adenomyosis, a little more endometriosis of the uterine muscle. So that's where the role for surrogacy can also come in. And then lastly, as we get older, even in men who are in great shape, they eat healthy, they don't smoke, all the things.
Right.
Our arteries, our veins are not as stretchy.
Right.
So pregnancies, when women are over 40, over 45 especially, they're more complicated.
Right.
So that's where I've seen some women be like, John, Dr. Norian, I feel more comfortable working with a surrogate, just given everything together, because I want to be a healthy mom who's around for college graduations and things like that 25 years later or 20 years later.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, time is a killer, and you got to catch up the time, because there will be the biggest issue for your journey to the IVF treatment. Thank you so much, Dr. Norian, for answering these important questions and sharing your expertise. I mean, your advice will surely help many people navigating this journey with more clarity and confidence.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone has a good holiday season, and the best is yet to come.
Thank you so much. And 如果大家感兴趣的话，我们都可以来请导播老师放一下，都可以联系 HRC 生殖中心的Dr. Norian， 他在 Rancho Cucamonga Pasadena Office 都在工作。那联系的话有中文咨询 Linda 206-399-7700呢，他是 Dr. Wilcox 的护士长 Linda， 他的电话呢是209-399-7700，同时呢扫二维码可以获得免费中文咨询的机会。感谢大家一直在观看我们的节目呢，后续呢也会请更多 HRC 生殖中心的医学专家为我们从医学的角度上来解读就有关于这个 IVF treatment 和代孕的相关话题。Thank you so much, Dr. Norian. I'm glad to talk to you. Hope we can have other episodes.
Take care. All the best, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holiday. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.